Hello, I'm Michael of M.O.D Kitchen Services. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. So, as usual, we always cover our cakes, our fondant cake, after covering our cake layers in chocolate ganache. I use white chocolate ganache, I use dark chocolate ganache. It depends on the time of the program, whether it's indoor or outdoor. I normally love working with white chocolate and dark chocolate. So you're just going to do a normal covering of our fondant cake. Of course, we all know how to cover our fondant cake. We have lots and lots and lots of videos on fondant covering, and this is no exception. We normally panel our cake and cover the top, then we flip and do our sharp edges, and this is no different. We normally do our panel, we create our edges, cut off the excess with either a cutter or a shovel, with the help of our fondant smoother being our guide. So when you're done, you're just going to do our final smoothing, then we roll the top and we cover, we flip and do our sharp edges. So in this video, we are going to learn how to stencil our cake in gold stenciling or gold design, and we are going to do different techniques or different ways of achieving. Stay tuned and relax as we bring you amazing more tutorials. After covering, we are just going to take our stencil and going to pin it to our cake and make sure there is no air trapped in there. Afterwards, we add a bit of water to our realizing and start applying our realizing to our cake, gently scraping. As I said in our previous videos, I make sure I scrape and reapply whatever realizing I have on my palette knife until I'm done. So here we are done adding our realizing to our stencil, and I realized there was air trapped in there, so I had to take it off and readjust it to make sure the air trapped in there are losing, or else we'll end up repeating the stencil design we've already created. So we just reapplied after allowing the air trapped in there to loosen up. Then we took off our stencil and brought out our pin. So we have our beautiful stencil without scraping. Of course, you can add a lot of realizing and scrape later, or you can add a less amount of realizing and scrape alongside until your realizing has been well spread over your stencil. So you're going to redo the stenciling design. So we are done covering the whole base of the cake. Most at times we normally want to stencil our cake, but we do find it a bit difficult to stencil the base of our cake because each stencil design comes with at least an inch allowance or an inch space before the stencil itself starts. So if you can see, I've flipped the cake, or should I say I've turned the cake upside down, and I'm just stenciling right at the base of the cake. So now the base is facing upward, and I've just positioned my stencil an inch above the cake base just to make sure I get the design starting at the very base of my cake. So this is a simple trick you can use to get your stencil, especially when you want to stencil your base or the base of your cake. You flip your cake over, or if it's a dummy, you can flip your dummy over, and just make sure you position the stencil at the very edge of your cake, making sure the allowance or the space they left has been pulled upward. Then you can start your stenciling and make sure you get your design starting from the very edge, the very tip of your base. We are finally going to finish out our stenciling with this very half piece left. After applying each stencil, please gently go to a running tap and just pass your hands on the surface of your stencil and make sure you are gently cleaning any royalizing pieces left on your stencil. When you're done, you wipe it with a wet napkin or a wet paper towel, and you can reuse it, or you can even leave it for it to dry completely before you can reuse it for your cake, to avoid you wetting your whole cake with your stencil, because in doing that, the stencil sometimes end up sticking to your cake, which makes it difficult to bring it off. So after we are done stenciling, we are just going to turn our cake over, and now our cake has been stenciled at the very tip of our base. You can see the stencil started at the very very tip. There is no allowance left. So here we are going to also stencil the top. If it has something to do with the top, you can just adjust it, push the stencil upwards, and make sure it's starting from the very tip. If it's going to start from the base, you turn or you flip your cake or your dummy upside down. Then you make sure it's hanging an inch above or wherever that allowance left is before you can start applying your royal icing. So you're just going to gently apply our royal icing. We are going to guide it with our palette knife to make sure we scrape and apply it wherever we need to apply them, especially when it comes to making of gold stencil. You don't want to leave any excess royal icing on your stencil. You have to scrape off the excess. If there is excess of royal icing after painting or spraying, when you take off your stencil, you might end up taking off those excess royal icing together with your stencil, leaving your stenciled piece unattended to or left without the gold being sprayed or brushed onto the surface well. So you have to make sure you scrape very well. You can start brushing the whole surface of your stencil with your gold. You have to make sure your edible spirit is very lighter than your gold. If not, it will end up passing through your stencil and ending up soiling your whole cake design. So you make sure your gold mixed with edible spirit or vodka isn't that much more of a liquid consistency, but a bit of a thicker paste, so that when you are done and you bring out your stencil, you can see your gold design very well, and there won't be much so when you, as you can see, I have my beautiful gold stencil, and I'm going to repeat the process. After applying each stencil, gently wash them, wipe them with wet paper towels or your napkins, and let it dry before you start all over again. So I'm going to repeat the process. We decided to brush this one. With the second tier, we decided to spray, so you can see the difference. The spray have the gold popping out more than the brush. So I think I would prefer you using your spray pump to apply your gold after using your realizing on your stencil. The pump is way better when it comes to gold stenciling than brushing. So we're here to spray the very last piece of stenciling left with the gold, and you see the outcome. So that's what I'm going to do with the very next here, which was the 6 inches. And when you check the difference, the 6-inch had the gold popping more than the 8 inches. So when you spray, you get your gold effect very brighter. As you can see, it's very, very bright. So I'm going to repeat the process with a 6 inches cake as well. So after making sure I apply the realizing and scraping of the excess, all you need to do is, this time around we've turned the dummy, it was a dummy, so we've turned it upside down. So you have to make sure you are covering the other base left with your tissue, with pins, adjusting it so that your gold doesn't end up attaching or getting to that part. So I'm just going to gently spray the whole cake, making sure, as you can see, even in the video after spraying, the gold was even, we had some gold in our tissue. I had to adjust and make sure the gold was being sprayed everywhere. So here we have our gold beautifully sprayed on our stencil, and the effect was very beautiful. The gold was very, very bright and on point. So I just take out the paper tissue. When I'm done, I just take out our stencil, leaving our gold stencil design on our cake. So here we have this beautiful gold popping, and it's very, very bright as compared to the one I brushed. Finally finish up with the other part, and I'll just add or put my paper tissue there to make sure my gold is not being sprayed, or the gold I'm spraying is not extending to the main cake which I covered, because I've flipped or I've turned the cake upside down, and the base has, the very top which has now become the base, has to be secured and prevented from any gold spray. So we just scrape off the excess before spraying our gold onto it. Then when you're done, we just bring out our stencil, and here we have our beautiful gold stenciling. There is an easy way to stencil your cakes in gold. So here we are done spraying. I'm just bringing out our pins that secured our stencil, and here we have that beautiful gold stenciling. So we are going to stack our cakes together, and we need to stick it with our royal icing. I normally stick my cakes with royal icing. When I'm done, I gently push it to the edge, lift it up, and place it on top of my other tier. After doweling, of course, you have to dowel your cakes very well. In our YouTube short, there's a video on how we dowel our cakes. You can also learn that from our YouTube short. So we are just going to adjust our cake, then we stick the remaining tier. Though we didn't stack them before leaving, we stack them separately, and we had to make sure our cake was leveled. So here is our 5-tier cake, looking all beautiful. So you're just going to finally finish up the design. When you are done, you just separate them and transport them to the venue. So here I'm sticking the last 3 together, and I'll transport them in 2 and 3. Just make sure it gets to the venue in one piece. When you're done, you're just going to add our molds to the borders. Then we get to the venue and arrange our sugar flowers. After lifting our cake onto our turntable, I decided to pipe the whole base with royal icing. Just a piece of royal icing to fill in any gap that is visible after just stacking the layers together. So we do that, and we use our shovel to guide us, gently scraping off any excess we have. As you can see, I'm using the shovel as a guide to just scrape off any excess realizing we have after piping. When we are done, we are just going to start sticking our mold to the base of our cake. So we repeat the same process with all tiers. Afterwards, we just brush our mold with our edible glue, CMC and chilled water. In our previous video, I said how we do our edible glue. We just stick it to the back and we start sticking the mold to our main cake design. We are now just going to stick our molds to our base, the main base design. So we apply our glue, then we start arranging them. It was a real smooth design, so we just gently make sure you arrange them. If not handled with care, it ends up breaking apart, so you have to make sure you handle with care. And we're just going to gently start sticking the whole molds to our cake design. So mostly when you use pin, or let me say toothpick, for your stenciling, you end up having dent in your fondant. What I normally do is I pipe a bit of realizing, and with my shovel I just smoothen out those spaces, those dents we left due to the stenciling of our realizing. So afterwards, with our bright gold and edible spirits, I'm just going to paint the border which has the gold stenciling gold. If we leave it white, it's going to be too obvious. It has to be gold to complement the other gold from the base. So the stenciling one was facing upwards, the other design was facing downwards. So we had to just paint where the base was stenciled gold. Afterwards, we just left the rest of the mold white. Since the cakes were white, it just had the 6 and 8 inches gold design. So the rest were all white, and we had to just paint the bit or the stenciling part which had the gold less popping. So you have to just paint the strokes a bit brighter, since some of them were a bit lighter after taking off the stenciling. So we just left the rest white. As I said earlier, we are just going to just apply our glue and just take our whole cake design to it. Then when we get to the end, we just cut off any excess. We cut off the excess and make sure they meet together. So here we have our beautiful cake, all 5 tier in our mold. So we just got to the venue and stacked the remaining 3 to the 2 tier. We just had to do everything at the studio before leaving to the venue, so we know whatever we are doing is on point and we are on track. We were all set for our event. We have a 5-tier wedding cake arranged together, not stacked. We had our sugar flowers in different shades of purple and violet. We had our violet, we had our lilac, we had a lighter shade of purple, we had our filler flowers, and we had a very, very, very lighter shade of lilac as well. So when I got to the venue, I realized my hoist machine was not working. My chandelier was not also plugged into a socket, and we got to know that the main power, there was a problem with our main power, so we had to just work on that and make sure everything was intact. Then we went ahead to attach our chandelier to our hoist machine, and we started arranging the layers together. So we had our 2-tier. Then we had to just check if our cake is leveled and is very straight. So if it's not, we just adjust them on our chandelier. There are some things you have to just adjust them to make sure your cake is centered and everything is just so on point. We had to stack the remaining 3 tier together. We boxed that one separately and transported it to the venue. So we added our realizing as usual. I start with realizing. Then I gently lifted our cakes onto the main 2 tier. When we are done, we positioned it and made sure everything was in the center. I had my students coming in. As I said earlier, if there is a design and I know my students were not taught, I just call them whenever I have an order. Then they come, use the opportunity to also learn. So we just started checking if everything was on point after stacking our 5 tier together. Then when we were done, we started arranging our sugar flowers from the bottom tier to the very top. We started arranging them from the bottom tier to the very top because the design the client sent had flowers from the top to the down, from the top tier to the bottom tier. Lots and lots of artificial flowers, but we used sugar flowers. We wanted to use sugar flowers to make it look beautiful and more classy. So we were just contemplating on where to put the topper, their initial spanner, and we settled on the third tier. Yes, we settled on the second tier rather. So afterwards we started arranging our sugar flowers, pushing our flowers in gently. If you don't take care, you end up messing up your cake. So you start pushing in your flowers, mixing the colors together. We don't just gather one color at one particular side. We just mix them all together and arrange them from the base right up to the top. When we were done, we shimmered the cake a bit and everything was so beautiful. We had to test if it was truly moving upwards and downwards. We had to just check everything before the client or before the wedding starts, because if you don't do that, you will end up having your cake not descending or not ascending when it's time for them to cut. So we have to make sure we go to the venue as early as possible, did our setup, did our testing and everything. We worked on our electrical problems. We solved all those stuff before the guests started coming in and the event eventually started. So we are going to push in our sugar flakes and arrange them beautifully till we get to the very top. Once you start arranging your sugar flowers, you sometimes go back, stand from a distance and just check if the arrangement is going as you want it. Don't just arrange everything, then you just go back and start checking and you realize everything is not well arranged. You stand from a distance, you admire the beauty of whatever you are doing. You assume you're a guest. If you walk in, will that decoration push you, or will that decoration be so nice and classy to you? Will it look nice? Will it look very, very attractive? When you go in for this design, you have to go back, admire whatever you are doing from afar. You come back and do better. If you go back and you think whatever design you are doing isn't really going well, you can just take them off, and you go in for your realizing. You seal every hole created by your floral wires. Yes, any hole or indents created by your floral wire, you can just seal it with your realizing. So you go ahead and we arrange everything till we are done. So when we are done, we started arranging our filler flowers. We just started pushing in our filler flowers to whichever part that needed the filler flowers. And definitely sugar flowers, you have some petals breaking off. You just clean those petals off your main cake board. You wouldn't want those petals to be left on your main cake after the client or the guest has walked in for the program to start. No, you don't want to see that. So you make sure you clean everywhere. You make sure everything is on point. You fill in with your filler flowers. Filler flowers or blossoms are mostly used to fill in any spaces left after arranging your sugar flowers. So we are just going to add those filler flowers, mixing the colors together. We don't just arrange them, we just arrange them with the colors being mixed up. White and a bit of lilac, a bit of purple, whatever colors we have there, we have to just arrange them, push them inside, and make sure it complements whatever design we were building out there. So we have this beautiful 5-tier cake after we were done arranging, and it was just so on point. The client loved it. My students who gave me the order also loved it. And everybody was happy. So we decided to glitter our cake. So the glitter, people normally ask, what do I mix? I use a teaspoon of pearl dust and I mix it up with alcohol. You can use about 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons, or you can use 1/3 cup for your glitter. If you use a lot of glitter and less amount of your alcohol or edible spirit, it will end up clogging in your airbrush machine, which we do not want that to happen. You have to make sure the glitter glitters your cake. So you make sure you take a smaller quantity, you add a bit more of alcohol or vodka or edible spirit to make sure you dilute it and enable that passage through whatever hole you're going to spray your cake from. So here we had to test if our cake would really descend and ascend. Then when we were done, everything was 1 point. The guest came in, I think, some few hours later, and everybody loved the cake. Thanks so much for joining me through this whole section. I'm Michael of M.O.D Catering Services. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. Thank you.